I want to fund a grant that cures another type of cancer. If I have to raise $50,000 a year for 20 more years until that happens, I want one of my grants to be, if they can cure one, they can cure them all.
You just heard Andrea Hill talking about her leukemia story and how she wants to give back to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. Andrea R Hill, a local CPA and business owner, is a mother, grandmother, and most recently a leukemia survivor. Andrea's firm, Andrea R Hill CPA and Accountancy Corporation, located in downtown Bakersfield, is a full-service accounting firm offering bookkeeping, payroll services, tax preparation, and strategies, as well as advisory consulting. She is now also passionate about raising funds and awareness for medical research to help put an end to all cancers, especially blood cancer. Andrea was born and raised in the San Joaquin Valley. She attended Fresno State and graduated from Cal State Bakersfield. She has been a Bakersfield resident for 40 years, and she most recently created Light the Night Team Red Warriors, which she in hopes turns into a nonprofit organization to help raise funds for leukemia research. In today's show, we discuss Andrea Hill's battle with leukemia, which brought her to LLS. Later in the show, we talk about Light the Night, which is October 27th at the Bakersfield Country Club. And we talk about Red Warriors and how they're looking for raffles and sponsorship for this event, which is Light the Night. Stay tuned later in the show to hear about what nobody knows about her.
Welcome back to the Our 2 Cents podcast, the show where your local professionals sit down with an array of guests to hear their story and impart some wisdom for both business and life-improving skills. This is your place to hear business and community leaders discuss relevant topics that matter to you.
Welcome to the show. My name is Amanda DiGiacomo. Before we get started on today's episode, I would like the followers and encourage them to listen to last week's episode with Lisette Patterson. She is founder and CEO of Casador Consulting Group. Andrea, we are happy to have you joining us today. Thank you for being here. I can't wait to get into some of the topics we have to discuss with you today. But before we start that, can you tell me a little bit about your story and with leukemia?
Well, last year I was diagnosed with acute promolexite, and I mispronounce that every time I say it. It's a big, long word, leukemia. It was a little bit of a surprise. I went from knowing something was wrong with my blood, but not knowing what it was, and just being overly tired during tax season, to being on a ventilator and being in a coma 8 days later. Yeah, I got a fever on a Sunday, thought I had COVID, ended up calling an ambulance on Wednesday because I still had a fever. And when I presented at the hospital, I had a double pneumonia, which was how the leukemia was attacking me. The type of APL typically gives people an infection or they hemorrhage. Wow. And so I got the infection. And Monday I had gone to urgent care to get a COVID test, and they'd listened to my lungs and didn't even feel I needed an x-ray. And 2 days later I had double pneumonia. Within 24 hours we found out I had leukemia. And then I went septic, ended up in the ICU. Thursday that week, my children flew in. I remember looking them in the eye and telling them I had leukemia. And that's a really hard thing to do. You know, my father died of cancer, and I heard from my brother. So I don't know. It just was so hard on me to watch my children cry because I'm laying in a bed hooked up to things. And anyway, but they also thought that the infection was maybe something else. So I was being tested for everything, encephalitis, meningitis. I had spinal taps. I was getting blood transfusions, platelet transfusions. Finally, I think maybe Friday or Saturday, they discovered what kind of leukemia it was. And then they realized it was what was causing the pneumonia, and that I needed to start chemo right away. I actually started chemo on Mother's Day in 21, and 4 a.m. that next night they called my son and said they needed to intubate me. My blood wouldn't oxygenate at all.
Oh gosh, I remember. So for the listeners, I have a personal relationship with Andrea for a while now, and she's a mentor and a good friend of mine. And I mean, every time I hear her story, right now I have chills.
Me too.
Every time I tear up when I hear your story. But from the outside, I didn't even know what was going on because there wasn't much movement on your social, because obviously you're in the hospital bed. You're not posting on social media. You weren't replying to text messages because you couldn't. You were in a coma. But at first when you were sent in there, when we thought it was pneumonia leukemia. You know, people were reaching out. We were like, do you need anything? Like, what can we do? And then I remember from like the outside looking in, then it went black, like went dark. There was no community. We didn't know what was going on. And it was such a scary time.
Silence.
Yeah. And then just to be from your perspective and your children's perspective, you know, having the doctors and you being like, this might be it, saying goodbye is so hard. You know, and I've met your daughter. I haven't met your son yet, but I've met your daughter a couple times, and it's just like, she
was 18 years old. Yeah, my son was 27. I'm divorced. Their father was very helpful, but both of my parents are gone. We don't have any other family in this town. And so the two of them were having to grow up really, really fast and try to deal with this. And then my son actually had to go back to Colorado. That's where he lives. While I was still in the coma. He's got 2 kids of his own. He had a job.
Right.
And leaving his little sister to deal with this kind of on her own with the support of her father. But and then I have a cousin that lives in Reno, Nevada that she helped my kids tremendously. She called the hospital every morning, every night. And eventually she kind of took over talking to the doctors because it got too much to be too much for the kids.
It just changes perspective on life. And I mean, we've gone to lunch a few times, and because for the viewers, spoiler alert, like she beats it. She's here with us today, and she beats leukemia. But like from my perspective, such a strong woman. Like, I mean, as she alluded to and a little bit in her bio, she's a CPA here in town. She runs her own firm. At the time, she just bought out another firm too. So she was in expansion mode. Then she went into this coma, leukemia, and you know, from going through all that to like where you are today, like I tell you every time, I take my hat off to you because I don't know how, like, such a strong individual to like go through all that, and you're still killing it at work, still growth, still the bubbly, amazing person that you are even after all this experience. So that's why I love you as a friend, and why I'm excited to tell the viewers today about, you know, the Bright the Light night that we're going to be doing, and then your new kind of nonprofit that you're starting called Red Warriors, because it's personal passion for me because I'm so close to you, and I see how much of a badass you are. So.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, while I was in the hospital, you know, I mean, I woke up, I was in the coma for 19 days, woke up not being able to pretty much move a muscle. The infection and the illness, and you know, it just, everything took an extreme toll. And I had been at that point doing chemo for 3 weeks while I was asleep. It took an extreme toll on my body, and you have to relearn everything. You have to relearn. They handed me my phone. I was like, I knew it was a phone, but I was like, who moved around everything? Right. And they hadn't, but you don't recognize it. So yeah, you have to relearn to feed yourself. You have to, you know, relearn to walk essentially. And I had to, because it was COVID, stay in the hospital longer. I couldn't go to rehab because I couldn't get chemo in a rehab facility, and a chemo nurse couldn't come in because of COVID, and I couldn't go out. And we ended up forcing the hospital to let me go home earlier because I couldn't get the PT I needed in the hospital. They were just stretched so thin. So hired private care, and that's within a month of being home, I was able to walk the walker again. And by September, I was able to walk again and go back to work. But I was gone for May, June, and July. But throughout all that time, the one thing I had to do, which was very, very hard for me, because like you said, I'm kind of a strong, independent, strong-headed woman. I literally had to let go of everything because I had no control of anything anymore. I was terrified my business was going to go under. I was terrified I would never be sitting here like this with you and in the shape I'm in and the energy to be able to carry on my business. It's just so hard to see the other side when you're in the middle of it. But I did. I had to let go, and just whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And I just have to do what's best for me to heal. And but I knew that if and when I made it to the other side, I had to give back in some way, shape, or form. And so I found out about, well, obviously LLS is an advocate for patients. And so I learned a lot about the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society while I was sick. Luckily, I didn't need their financial aid, but a lot of people do. One day, my chemo was $18,000. So I don't know how people without really good insurance deal with this. Can afford it. Yeah. And they help with that. But I found out about an event they do around America called Light the Night. And I reached out to actually the national organization about trying to bring one here, and they pointed me to the Central Valley chapter, and they said actually they had something very similar here. They call it Light It Red in Kern County because it's a little bit smaller version of the full Light the Night, but it is still a part of Light the Night. And that the last time they'd had one was 3 years ago, and they were trying to bring it back. And I said, well, I want to be involved. So I am now an executive committee member. They run this one, a lot of the cancers, think of Relay for Life.
Right.
For example, Light the Night's sort of similar. We carry lanterns, and it is a walk at the full Light the Nights events. But they run these through executive teams. They like to get corporations involved and have employee teams. People can donate through payroll deduction. So I am one of those executives, and I've created this team called Reds Warriors, and you're on my committee and you're part of my team. And as part of that, I'm now going to turn Reds Warriors into its own nonprofit.
Which is amazing.
Yeah.
Before we get too far into Red Warriors here, because I want to talk about that a lot too, let's talk a little bit more about the actual event. So you mentioned the lanterns, which when I was in the meeting with you with LLS and they were kind of explaining it, they have 3 different colors. They have the white, the yellow, and the red.
Right.
They each signify something special. Can you go a little bit into like what that night is going to kind of look like?
Yeah. So it's going to be up at Bakersfield Country Club this year, Thursday, October 27th. And everybody gets a lantern. I'll be carrying a white lantern. That signifies that I'm a survivor. You would be carrying a red lantern because you're a supporter, or you could choose, if you knew someone that had passed from leukemia, you could carry a yellow lantern, and that's in remembrance.
Okay.
And so those are the 3 colors of lanterns. But there will be food. There's going to be music, beer and wine garden, which my company is sponsoring.
Which is awesome.
Yeah. And
there'll be a fireworks show. I think Tiger Fight,
yes.
which is they're a big supporter of our 2 Cents podcast. Kyle's on the board of that nonprofit. I think they're sponsoring the fireworks show.
Yeah, Chris. Yeah. Tiger Fight is also an executive team and part of the Light the Night planning committee. Yeah.
It sounds like such a fun event. I hope a lot of people. Now, I know there's a looming kind of deadline for logos and things if people want to sponsor this event. I think it's August 24th is when we have to get things in.
Yeah. To be on the shirt.
Okay.
If you want your logo on the shirt that each team member gets, you need it in by August 24th. And they don't need the money. They just need a commitment form and a logo to get it on the shirt. But you have to be a $5,000 sponsor or more to get the logo on the shirt.
Okay.
$2,500 sponsors get their name on the shirt, and they still need that by August 24th.
Okay.
But you could still do a sponsorship after and especially if it were one of the bigger ones, and get your logo on all the materials at the event. It just wouldn't be on the shirt.
Awesome. So for those of you that are listening, this is going to drop August 18th. So that gives you about a week if you're wanting to sponsor this event and have your logo on those t-shirts or sponsor something at that event. In our show notes, we will have Andrea's contact information, our contact information, if you're wanting to commit to that and help sponsor for that event.
And then there's actually a link to my team page.
Okay.
For donations.
We'll put that in the show notes too, so people can directly go and sponsor for this event. Okay, so we've mentioned Red Warriors, which for those of you, I mean, you're probably going to see the images when we come out and hit this, but I think it came from because you're spitball fire redhead, right?
Yeah.
So Red Warriors was very fitting, and our awesome logo that the women's like fist and pump with the they'll put the little logo for
leukemia. It's got the leukemia ribbon on it because leukemia color ribbon is orange.
Awesome.
And then I had bought myself this orange bead bracelet that I wear every day to remind myself when things get tough, I look down and think about what I went through, and that anything compared to that is probably easy, and so I can probably get through whatever's stressing me out that day. Noe, who did my logo, without me even telling him to, put a bracelet on that arm that's almost exactly like mine,
which is awesome.
And so and so it just I love the logo.
Okay, so this year you didn't turn it into a nonprofit, but next year we are officializing Red Warriors Fighting for Hope. But this year, what are some events that Red Warriors are going to be doing to help collect funds that are going to go towards the LLS?
Well, so I have a team goal of $50,000. And the reason I pick that is if I can raise that much money, LLS will let me name a research grant. I'd love to raise, sky's the limit. I'd love to raise. Medical research saved my life. 20 years ago, my leukemia was a death sentence.
Right.
And now it's one that's curable. So I want to help fund medical research and local people in town. So yeah, I want to turn Reds into a nonprofit. I've got several events planning right now. We are going to do some dine outs. I'm talking to a few restaurants here in town. I've got nothing cemented yet, so I don't want to name anybody. We're going to do a World Series pool, so stay tuned for that. That'll be fun. And then I'm actually also talking to a couple local breweries about doing an event in early November with some food trucks and some music. And so that, and then I'm having a woman's clothing party, do a raffle there. So I'll be selling raffle tickets. And then we may even do a few Facebook Live raffles.
So I think we're talking about some raffles, and I definitely know we're looking for sponsorship for raffle items. So, listeners, if, these $5,000, $2,000, ticket items of sponsorship isn't something that you can afford right now, but you want to participate and help, we are looking for raffle baskets and things like that, larger gifts to raffle off. So if you have some of that, you can definitely donate and help in that situation too. That
would be great.
Is there a deadline that you would like people to come with the raffles?
Probably by September 30th.
Okay.
I think that would be a great date.
And again, they can contact you in the show notes, or even come here to our 2 Cents podcast and drop things off over here, and we can get them to you as well. Yeah, I'm really hoping that we do this brewery food truck thing.
I know,
so
me
much
too.
Fun. And, I think it's a good way to have a little fun, but also bring in some money for a good cause. Anything else you want to talk about with Red Warriors specifically?
No, I would like to type or talk a little bit more about LLS itself. Perfect. And then,
Okay, awesome. So where would you want to start with?
Well, LLS, their mission is research, patient advocacy, and support, and then policy. So policy would be with government, stuff like that. But medical research, they fund medical research specifically for blood cancers. I was reading about how LLS was started and there was a quote. It was started back, I think it was in the 20s or 40s. A little boy had leukemia and his parents started a fundraiser and it grew into LLS. But in 1955, leukemia was 100% fatal. Right. Period. If you got leukemia, there just was nothing they could do. And like I said, mine now is a cancer they use the word curable with. It's a very specific treatment that you have to have. My chemo cocktail was arsenic, which I know you're like, oh, what? Say that again? Yeah. They pumped that through me 11 times a month, every other month for 7 months, but it saved my life. So really feel really strongly. I've read the articles about the research that was done 30 years ago in Europe is when they discovered it's arsenic and retin A. The combination of those two can cure APL. And it took a little longer for America to get on board with that. But to know that, there are research teams out there doing that and that they can find things like that, I want to raise money. I just want them to cure them all. I don't care what kind of cancer you have. I'm an extremely lucky girl. I'm extremely lucky to be sitting here talking to you and not have a mental issue, or cognitive issues from what I went through. Double pneumonia itself could have killed me. Being on a ventilator, sepsis, leukemia, so many things. And for me to be able to, like you said, I came out of, once I got done with chemo, I just kept getting stronger.
Right.
but to be able, I made it through tax season. I didn't know how I was going to do that. I did not know how I was going to work 12-hour plus days, 7 days a week, but I did.
Right.
So I just never thought I'd be here, be this okay. I don't know how else to describe it.
You're beaming.
Yeah.
Like, the audience can't see it, but you really are.
Yeah.
And that's why your story is so touching. And what are some things that you did in recovery, like when you were out of the coma, that helped you get through chemo? Or what were you helping tell yourself to get through these things? Were there things you picked up? Were there books? Was there podcasts? What were some of the things you were doing?
No, you know what I did? I binge watched Law and Order SVU.
Oh, okay.
All of it, like 22 years.
Oh,
worth.
man. Okay.
Because I just laid in bed.
Right.
No, I started looking for silver linings. That's what I did. I just started looking for anything that happened, trying to find the positive in it.
Right.
You know, my daughter left for college Monday morning this week. She goes to CU Boulder, and she actually took a gap year last year, mainly because she didn't want to do Zoom University again because she was a freshman in 2020. But I needed her.
Right.
And so her taking that year off and us getting that extra year together, it was the best silver lining out of me getting sick. You know, we would have never had that year, and we bonded in a way that we just never would have.
Right.
And so that's my takeaway. I'm a much easier going person now. I still get stressed out, you know, like you said, I am a redhead. But
Spitfire is what I call you sometimes. But yeah.
You're not the only person that's ever called me that. But I take things a lot easier now with a grain of salt, because in the big scheme of things, nothing is as big as what I dealt with last year. You know,
I mean, from the outside looking in, you just had defeated all this. You came back, your business successful. You just moved into a house, and I know your daughter and Alice and a couple people were helping you move into the new house.
Right.
And
yeah.
and then now you're doing this LLS, and then now Red Warriors, and it just keeps looking. It's a blessing on blessing on blessing. I think is coming like all your way, which is really nice too.
Yeah. I'm also on the LLS leadership committee, which is involved with the Man Woman of the Year.
Oh, okay.
Campaign.
Let's talk a little bit about that, because I don't think sometimes some viewers don't really know what that is, but I think they started changing it. Didn't you say in our last meeting that instead of man, woman?
It's going to be visionaries. They're no longer going to segregate men, woman. So it'll be visionaries of the year. But I got asked to be on that committee, and we've had one meeting so far. So I'm kind of a newbie on that, but I'm very excited about that. You know,
so they normally compete to raise funds throughout
right,
and then they announce like who the winner is
at a gala at the end of the campaign. This year's Woman of the Year, Katie Kreiser, and I became great friends because of this. You know, because I wanted to support her. I've known her. It's her father-in-law. Katie lost her husband Chris to lymphoma 3 years ago, and her father-in-law is Rick Kreiser. He owns Carney's office. They used to be copy machines back when, you know, I've known him for over 30 years. So, but yeah, everybody knows Carney's, and cancer's touched that family in ways it's touched generations. It's really, really sad. But another silver lining is the friendship that I've got with her. She's one of the co-chairs on the leadership committee. And so I'm excited to be on there to help raise, but she raised over $100,000 this past year in her Woman of the Year campaign.
Yeah, that's awesome. You said, was it the most?
Yeah, the most any Man Woman of the Year candidate has ever raised in Kern County.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, they've got great goals. I hope we blow right past them for next year.
Right.
Yeah, because, you know, it's all really exciting. And the great thing about, we're part of the Central California chapter here in Kern, which actually includes Fresno and San Luis Obispo.
Okay.
And you know what? Something we didn't actually touch on. If you are a sponsor at the Light the Night, you're also a sponsor at the Fresno Light the Night.
That's right. And your logo and stuff goes over there too. Yeah, it goes
there too. So, you know, if for one sponsorship, you're getting 2 events. That's pretty good bang for your buck, you know?
Yeah, that is good advertising right there.
Right. And that's what, you know, great, so that we combined resources in these 3 cities.
Right.
The other thing that's great about LLS, 86% of what they raise goes back to patients. and they have a travel assistance, they have copay assistance, urgent needs assistance, they have support for caregivers. So if my daughter needed, just even counseling or something to help while she was being my pretty much, my sole caregiver, they would have been there for her if she needed them, because I had to be transported to the cancer center at first because I couldn't walk. And so I went on a gurney in a medical transport. And I don't know if it was LLS or the AIS Cancer Center, but somebody did help with that for me. And, it's extremely appreciative because it's a lot. You're worried about just trying to live, and you've got all these medical bills and it's tough.
It is really tough nowadays.
It's really tough. And so all the funds that LLS raises all over America, 86% of those go back to patients and caregiving and helping, those of us with leukemia or the families of people with leukemia.
Right.
And not a lot of fundraising people can say that. I think that's pretty good. And then they distribute funds based on need. And so Kern County, because we have such need, honestly, there are only there's 3 major areas in California that seem to be little pockets, unfortunately. And they have spent $2.6 million here, which is more than we've raised here. So we actually get more than we raise because of the need.
Right. Then, yeah.
So some counties may raise $100,000 and only 40,000 of it stays because that's their need.
Right.
Right. And that helps those of us who have a bigger need.
Which is nice.
I feel very strongly when people ask me, will the money stay here? I say, yes, it's going to stay here.
Which is awesome. I mean, supported you this year with LLS, but in the past I've helped serve some other people who were doing campaigns and things like that. And I do think it's a great cause. And like I said, the office has, good ties with Tiger Fight, which a lot of their funds go to LLS as well. So I think everyone in this office, I can say, is pretty much like LLS we're all big supporters of it over here for sure.
Yeah. And there's another friend I made this year is Chris Wilson, who started Tiger Fight. I had heard of Tiger Fight, didn't know what it was.
Right.
Now I consider him a friend and another silver lining.
Yeah. I like that you're saying that. I mean, did you have a conversation with your daughter about some of the things that she tried to do to stay positive during that time? Because it's so hard, seeing your parent, go through all this.
Yeah. My daughter is an old soul, and she keeps that kind of stuff very tight to her vest. She's not like her mother. Her mother's emotions come flowing out everywhere. And my daughter's name is Allison. She keeps things, like I said, pretty tight, and she just buckles down and does what she has to. She had to set up a hospital room pretty much in the living room of my house for me to go home. My cousin Kim was helping her. There were some other people in the community. The company that we used for the private care was telling us what we needed and who to call and all of that. But, the 2 of them did it, all of it. I don't know too many 18-year-olds that give up their summer to take care of their mother who has cancer.
Yeah.
At that point, we knew I was pretty good chance I was going to be okay.
Yeah.
But
you needed assistance in recovery.
Yeah. Once I woke up from the coma, I think they knew I would be okay. But while I was in the coma, there was a point where they did a neurological assessment. I failed.
Oh no!
So
I didn't know this part of the story actually either.
They did not know if I was going to wake up and be the same person and be okay. And then I reached a point where they needed to trach me because you can only be on a ventilator a couple of weeks. Yeah. And I was on it 19 days. And so they had a meeting, a little family meeting on the phone. And they said, she's going to kick us in the rear if we let them cut her there. But we have to so she can live.
Right.
But then the surgeon called and said, her platelets are too low. You can't cut her.
Yeah.
She won't make it. And so then they had to call the hospital and say, you can't cut. No. And then they said, but she can't be on the ventilator. The tube could deteriorate. She could get an infection.
Right.
And my cousin said, I'm gambling on the tube because if you cut her, she's not going to live anyway.
Right.
And then I woke up
Yeah, thank God you had somebody advocating for that, though.
I know.
Because if they did cut
me, then I would have, So, I mean, they were told more than once while I was in the coma if she makes it through the night.
Yeah.
So, I can't either. And I slept through it. So I missed the scary part. Everybody else had to deal with it for me, you know? Mm-hmm. I found texts on now I'll probably start tearing up.
Yeah.
I found texts on my phone to my sister because she came to visit me that week. I don't remember much about that week. And when she came to visit me when I woke up, and she said, referred to when she came before, I said, you were here before? And she said, yeah, I came before the coma. And I'm like, I don't remember. And then I found the text where I told her how scared I was, and I just burst into tears because I don't remember that part.
Yeah.
I don't, which is probably good.
Yeah.
But I don't. I found a picture, and I'll probably be sharing it on my social media soon. I did share it on the team page.
Okay.
Of me in the hospital with oxygen mask on, 5 days into having a fever and everything. As you can imagine, I don't look great. And I found that on my phone. And Lizette Patterson, who you said was on the show last week, good friend of both of ours, one of my dearest friends. And I texted her and I said, I found this horrible picture of myself on my phone from the hospital. She goes, you sent that to me. Oh. I said, oh my God, I sent that to you? So you sent that to me when you were in the hospital. And I don't remember that. So, I think the body protects you from certain things. That's true. And it's probably protecting me from that fear.
Yeah, of going back there.
There because I'm sure it was pretty bad.
Yeah.
But everybody else had to shoulder it for me for a few weeks till I woke up. And then when I woke up, I thought I had been on a trip and asked my daughter if people were mad at me because they couldn't get a hold of me. And she said, Mom, you've been sick.
Yeah.
I said, what do you mean? She goes, Mom, you've been really sick. I'm like, what are you talking about? And she said, Mom, you were in a coma. I'm like, what?
Right.
I had, they give you pretty strong narcotics to keep you in a medically induced, they give you fentanyl.
Yeah.
That's what they gave me to keep me in a medically induced coma. And so I had some really crazy hallucinations, even for probably a week or more after I woke up.
Oh, my land.
Yeah. Thought I was being kidnapped, and I would go in and out of that dream and accused a nurse of
I think I heard this story of you accusing the nurse
of taking me somewhere else. And I had a nurse call my son in the middle of the night because the man who shot him, he's never been shot in this hallucinative state. The man who had me kidnapped shot him while he was trying to rescue me. So I told him that man was trying to kill me and that he needed to come save me. And I thought that was, again, a dream. And they're like, nope, that really happened.
Oh, no.
So, I think I'm probably not, my memories don't really come back till probably at least a week or more after the coma.
Right.
And, and even then it was, just trying to get through the day.
Right. So traumatizing time anyways.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to remember, but
no. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was at Adventist Hospital. I think we said that earlier.
I don't think we said which hospital you were at.
But I was at Adventist, and they were fabulous.
That's good to hear.
And the cancer center, AIS Cancer Center, is a world-class cancer center. I would tell any one of my friends if they ever, God forbid they ever do, but to go there. Usually we think of going to LA, but I love my doctor there. I loved all the staff there. And, they saved my life.
Yeah.
So now I want to give back, and I want to fund a grant that cures another type of cancer.
That should be awesome.
That, if I have to raise $50,000 a year for 20 more years until that happens, I want one of my grants to be,
which is awesome.
Yeah. Because, if they can cure one, they can cure them all.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. And,
we can do it. We got it. We're going to do it.
I feel so lucky that I made it through what I made it through, and that mine is one that's curable.
Right.
That I want to do that for somebody else.
Yeah. Switching gears slightly a little bit, what are some hobbies or pleasures that, like, when you were able to, be more mobile and get back to it, that you felt like, we're so happy? Because I know you cook. I love watching all your cooking videos. But like, is cooking, or what other things did you like Now, and do you take more pleasure into them now that you've gone through this?
Yeah. Well, like this past Christmas, and I was on a break from chemo in the month of December, but I was still going through treatments. I baked my little tushy off this Christmas, and I love to cook, but I'm not usually one that, bakes 5 different kinds of cookies.
Right.
And I did that this year. I baked cookies, I baked bread, I gave baskets to the cancer center, to the nurses. Well, I love food, but I love cooking,
Right.
I love turning my music up and just the whole process of finding recipes and planning a meal and putting it all together,
right?
Holiday meal. I love that kind of stuff, and I really got back into that a lot.
Were you excited to get back into it the first time? Because I know you've cooked me a couple things, like when I was in recovery for some stuff, and which was delicious, by the way.
Thank you.
I'm always on her Instagram. She posts on her stories like little foods. And I'm like, oh my God, what is that? Okay, I have to come over and get some of that.
Yeah. No. Well, and that actually was one of the things my daughter and I got to do together.
Awesome. Yeah.
And so it all just really tied together. I love Christmas. It's my favorite holiday. And so I started planning on Pinterest, and like how I was going to decorate my Christmas tree for months in advance. So
love Pinterest.
So that was fun, because I had to embrace the downtimes.
Right.
And again, I'm kind of a type A person. I don't typically embrace downtimes.
Right.
And I had to find things.
I mean, you were still working. You were doing continued education a lot during that downtime too.
Yeah,
so.
I was doing
just
that.
because I personally know you. You were still kind of working there.
And I worked as much as I could once I could go back to work. Well, that's what we have to do when we're self-employed, right?
It's true.
But I had to learn to listen to my body.
Yeah.
I had to learn when my body told me. I used to
push through and just keep going. I do the same thing.
Yeah. 2020, I had a hip replacement, remember?
Yeah.
And it was pretty much blown out since March. And I just kept going. I didn't have surgery till November.
Right.
And when they got in there, it was broken and dislocated. And I had just kept walking because that was the year tax season never ended.
Yeah, it's true.
And, and the pandemic, and we were locked down, and so that's what our life is, or mine was, as a sole proprietor and a single mother. You just push and you keep going. Well, last year taught me you can't do that anymore. You have to stop and listen to your body and take care of yourself, because if you don't, you can't take care of other people.
That's a good lesson for all entrepreneurs listening right now. Because I suffer because I'm young, and I'm the next generation of entrepreneurs and people that are going to be leading, and I'm like, I had to do it all now. I got to do it all now, and I just keep going. That sometimes that work-life balance, you just keep doing it.
Right.
You don't think about it. So that is good advice.
I learned to give other people grace because I had to give it to myself, and I used to be harder on myself than anybody else, and when I had to give it to myself, it allowed me to give it to other people and be more patient with everyone.
That's good to know too, because I'm sure I didn't think of it that way either, how much patience and grace you've had to come from this experience. And
I'll be honest, I probably wasn't the best patient when I was in the hospital. I wanted out of there so bad, and I was like, fix me, teach me how to walk again, and I wanted it all to be instant, and it wasn't. It couldn't be. Yellowstone. You watch Yellowstone?
Oh yeah, I watch Yellowstone.
When he woke up after,
he just immediately rips everything,
and walks down the hall. I was like, I call BS on that. That's not how you get out of a coma.
That is true. That is funny. We do have a section that we do called Rapid Fire, where we ask kind of 3 general kind of not as personal but personal questions. So the first one here is, what is something nobody knows about you?
Some people know this, but played saxophone in the band. So
wow, I didn't actually know that.
Yeah, so I'm a band geek.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
How long did you play that for?
I played the saxophone from the 5th grade until I was a junior in high school.
That's pretty cool.
And I played all. There are 4 models of the saxophone. There's the alto sax, the bass, the tenor, and the soprano. And during that, I played all 4 at one point.
Wow. Okay.
I couldn't play one now if you handed it to me to save my life. But yeah, I did.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
If you could be remembered for one thing, what would it be?
It's got to be the research grant.
Yeah.
I would love to have a research grant that I picked the name for. Doesn't even have to be my name, but that I named, that grant helped fund finding a cure for cancer. That is a great goal. What is a common myth about your job or field of expertise? Everybody thinks we're boring. I think you and I prove that accountants
we're very social.
We're very social.
Very outgoing, yeah.
Yeah. We're not your typical geeky, nerdy accountants.
That is true. Everyone assumes that you just like crunching numbers behind a desk and you don't like talking to anybody and you're introverted. Then they meet me or you, or there's a couple other people who are similar.
Right.
They're like, what? You do that?
Yeah. Yeah. No, you and I are not typical accountants. I think probably 75%, maybe even higher, are those.
Oh, that's true. There are a lot that do like to stay in their little cubicle and bubble.
Yeah, and have pocket protectors. But no, that's not us.
Awesome. Well, is there anything you want to close us out with? Any other events you might have forgotten before we end the podcast here?
The Fresno Light It Red event is November 12th. Okay. It's at Chachansey Park. I'll be at that event as well. So any of my friends and family in the San Joaquin Valley, I'm hoping, I grew up in Chowchilla, which is near Fresno. Most of my family is up there. So I'll be at both. I'll be at that event and then our event here.
And the Bakersfield one is October 27th, and it is at the Bakersfield Country Club.
Correct. It starts at 4:30 in the afternoon.
Awesome.
And it is for families.
Yes.
Children are, welcome.
Well, we appreciate you being on the show, and I love hearing your story, and
I love sharing it. If it helps raise money for research, I love sharing it.
Well, thank you so very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
This show has been brought to you by the Law Office of Kyle Jones, Troy Burton with the Lynn Company, CPA John Duffield, Scott Hansen Real Estate Lender, broker and investor, Dave Plivlich, President and CEO of the Marcom Group and MarcomBranding.com, and Amanda DiGiacomo, President of Atlas Financial Solutions. You've been listening to the Our 2 Cents podcast. Check out the show notes for links and more information about the show. Also visit our website at our2centspodcast.com or catch us on Instagram at Our 2 Cents Podcasts. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and share with others.